we're not going to talk about poetry today. We're going to talk about the assignment so that you kind of can start thinking about it. Now, if you look at the schedule though, you can see it, can't you? The page.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you look at the schedule, about halfway through really, because we're on what today is the 17th. So it's like journal 7 is due. But if you look at, for instance, we have another 3 weeks or so before we take the poetry exam and the poetry essay is going to be due. So I want to go a little bit over the poetry essay, and then I'm also going to give you another resource that hopefully will help people with what's going on, as far as some of the things I saw as far as issues. So I am going to I'm just going to find something really quick, but I won't open it up yet. Let's see if I can find it. I'll do that. But I want to kind of walk people through just a sample paper, and so that people can see what it is that, if there is an essay, what, that has issues, what is it that they can do to fix it and things like that. So, but first, let's talk about the actual assignment. So if you just go into the poetry unit, obviously, where the journal readings are, and where, you can't see the module exam because it's only visible when it's open. But if you go to Unit 2 poetry paper assignment, it's just going to, obviously you can submit and things like that. We're going to go back a little bit. But let's look at the actual assignment. And so I'm going to switch what we're watching so that we can see that. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and we're going to go to the essay. Okay. So essentially you have a 1,000-word essay is like roughly 4 pages, but 3.5 to 4 pages. But the truth is I'm not ever going to grade you on the actual number of words. I just want it to do what it needs to do. So you, again, like with the other one, you have 2 options. They're just both listed on the same essay assignment sheet. So option 1, as you did with the prose essay, examine 2 poems in the textbook along with a given theme, or which depict the same situation or idea in a different way or from a different perspective. So in other words, take 2 poems that you see as in some way related. And, it could be as simple as taking 2 sonnets and comparing those 2 sonnets. What I would try not to do is don't compare 2 of Shakespeare's sonnets or 2 of Philip Sidney's sonnets. I'd prefer it to be something 2 that we've read. If you're going to use a poem that we haven't read because you think it goes with a poem that we have, just clear it with me. Either one is fine. But I really want it. One of the poems has to be something that we've had assigned to us. So I don't want you to just go pick 2 other poems that have nothing to do with anything we've read, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you'll just, I think you wrote your own version of a short story.
Yeah.
But, it was about a little over half and half, like a little over half of the students wrote their own short story. But it's either option is perfectly okay. So, so there's the first one. Then the second option is to select a favorite poem from what you have read in the unit and then create a new poem. I said, people, can you believe that? Look at that. That's horrible poem. See, I never spelled the wrong word or misspell it. I just read a whole other word. But you have to create a new poem. Isn't that funny? I love that I did that. But then you create a new poem based on the first. So use some poem from that we've read as inspiration, and then write essentially your version of that poem. And it doesn't have to make fun of it or anything. I mean, what you want to do is have a whole new something. The only thing you can't do is you can't just turn in your sonnet that you wrote and claim it was inspired by one of the other sonnets. it needs to be a different poem than the one that you turned in for that assignment. Could you write another sonnet? Yes, but honestly, I'd rather not read a bunch of sonnets, so I've already done that. But essentially, just like you did with the short story one, though, part of it is the poem, and then the other half of the paper is, why did you choose the poem that you chose? Why, what is it that resonated with you? And why did you make the choices about your own poem? And this actually is going to take some time to write out, because I want you to tell me how you wrote the poem. Like, go through, well, I needed to find a rhyme for this, and so I was looking through, and here are my options, and so I wrote this. I think that fit the best. But then I was worried about the rhythm, and so I went back and I revised it to that. I mean, literally, I want you to be very specific about how it happened. How did you put this poem together? Did you make lists of rhyming words? That's what I do, actually. Some people look it up and they'll go, word that rhymes with, and they'll look it up on their phone, and the phone will literally list a bunch of words that rhyme with that word. And so, there's, maybe that's how you did it. Whatever it is you chose, if you chose to add to, like, maybe that original poem was 20 lines long, and when you finish yours, it was 24. Well, what made you feel like that change was necessary? And it could be that the form, you don't follow the form as much as you wanted to because you were so busy trying to get the message across. That's fine. So you're not going to be graded on, are you exactly the same rhythm and rhyme as the original, or something like that. It's more, did you write a poem that I could see the original in? Like, can I see where the inspiration is? And did you fully explain it? The explanation is infinitely more important than the actual poem. So, but the truth is either one of these, no matter which option you pick, you need to use the poems, and you need to use them a lot. And so I'm going to talk about how to cite a poem and how that's different than if you were citing a prose, at least for this experiment, because it's really important for you to follow this exercise, because you want to follow poetic form as much as possible. So no matter which choice you make, your essay will be a mixture of both essay and poetry. And that, like, for instance, with that first one, if you choose option one, you're going to write an essay and you're going to fully look at one poem, fully look at the other poem, and then really compare them together. And then you have to illustrate it a lot. So anything you say the poem is saying, show me, and then explain to me. So we're going to do what's called, and I'm going to throw this in here and then take it out. It's called the ICE method. And that means you introduce and, cite it, actually put in the quote, explain, and then further elaborate. And so you're going to show me the poem lines, and then you're going to tell me what you think those mean. And then you're going to explain them. And then you're going to tell me how that fits in with the theme you're trying to say. So what I don't want is for you to write an essay, well, any of you, not just you, Jordan, but I don't want the students to write an essay that, it fully talks about, I don't know. I'm trying to think of which one. Oh, so If by Kipling, and all the advice that he's giving his son, and he gives him advice about this and this, and it's really just a summary. Instead, okay, what is it that you're trying to say? If you're comparing If by Kipling, this advice to a son, to From Mother to Son by Langston Hughes, then how are those two, what are both poems sharing? This idea of giving advice to a kid, parents caring enough about children so that they give them advice so that they don't, they have a better life and things like that. And then, okay, so once you have that, okay, both of them are talking about that theme. How do they do it differently? And you can't just say, Kipling's is more formal and it's a dad talking to his son, and, show me how he's formal. show me, and his advice is a lot more complex than the mom's advice. The mom's advice is pretty much just keep going. Don't give up. Don't quit. And so, you know, maybe I can say that that simplicity is there, but more she talks about the struggles and what she had to go through metaphorically. And I'll even say it's a metaphor, the way she describes it. And then I need to show that. So the number one key word is show, 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 show. Show me in the text that the poem says something, and then tell me what that means to you and how you see those words playing out. What is that you see in those words? Because you can't assume we're all going to see the poem the same way. So it's going to definitely have lots of citation in it. And that's for that first one. And you have to compare the two poems. You can't just say summarize one poem and then summarize the other poem and expect that to fly. No, you really have to use the poems and the lines from the poems and the words to illustrate what you say is going on. Now, you don't have to talk about a theme. You can actually talk about metaphor, or you can talk about rhythms, or you can talk about imagery, or you can talk about diction. You can talk about an actual element within the poem and see how each poem does it differently. That's fine too. But you're comparing the two poems, and you have to do that line by line. You don't have to cite all of the lines of a poem, especially some of these poems are pretty long, but you need to do as much as you can to illustrate every point you're trying to make. Okay, so option 2, you're going to show the poem you've written. So you're going to list it first, and it needs to be original. Do not go steal somebody else's poem and plop it in. Please don't have AI write a poem, because it's not going to be very good. And that's number 1. And number 2, you're not going to be able to explain how it was written because you didn't write it. So write your own. Remember, it's more important to be able to explain it and do that well. You'll get a much better grade than if the poem's okay, but you can't explain it. So you show the poem, and then the rest of the essay is going to explain why you chose to write the poem, why the other poem inspired you, how you developed the poem line by line. So it's very specific, but again, you're showing lines. So the same things I'm going to ask you to do, you're still going to have MLA format. We're going to talk about that for a second. And then the essay compares the two works of fiction, or, you know, shows the full poem and then in detail discusses how you made the poem and put it together. It uses quotes and details from each poem. That's going to be on there. It's clearly organized, and it's logical, and it's easy for me to go through and see what point comes next and why. And it cites the poems, both poems, and includes 2 secondary sources too. So this is a little bit different than what we had last time. You have to have outside sources. And maybe it's on poem writing, you know, you can start with a quote or something like that. Maybe it's research that you did to write your own poem. It doesn't matter what those outside sources are, but they need to be. And well, don't use Wikipedia. It may be that you go and research the author of the original poem, and so that gives you a way to discuss, you know, kind of why it was interesting to you and stuff like that. And then once you use that, cite that material, whatever you got from the biography, and then put that the full citation at the end. So you have to have a works cited page, and it has to have, in the case of option 1, 4 sources. In the case of option 2, 3 sources. So even if you write your own poem, you have to have 2 outside sources. And then it's clear and it's free of errors. So that was pretty similar to what we had last time. But now let's talk. Let's see. I'm going to go switch. Let's see if I can. I'm going to switch to, and this is actually one I wrote into, but I'm going to do some things because I'm going to show, this is actually for American literature. And you can see my writing because I actually write inside essays. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control A. I'm going to highlight the whole section, and then I'm going to undo something that I want to address because it's auto. And I'm going to do another part. Okay, we'll do none, and then I'm going to make it single spaced. Okay, So this is a person from a long time ago. I think it's 2017. And the main thing is, okay, first of all, obviously there's blue writing, but I put, notice how I have this little blue mark right here. And this writing says no extra space between paragraphs. That's because there's extra spacing here and there's extra spacing between paragraphs themselves. Now, unfortunately, even though I went over a lot of this format with people, a lot of people didn't listen. So let's talk a little bit about, and I'm just going to do something for a second. For one thing, this header does not go in the heading. So this, and I'm just going to, actually, I'm just going to delete this too. Take that pagination out. But this needs to get out. And then it needs to be here. And some of this, Jordan, it may be review for you. You're like, I already know this. But you always put your name in it. And actually all of this, what else is wrong with this header?
The date is not spelled out.
Right. And it's in the wrong place.
Oh yeah, that too.
Of course. And that's, so let's put it where that's not what we need. We need April 23rd, 2017. Now this was a rough draft. So, and now it's also not in, and this really should be English. That's, in this case, it's 2130 because that was a American Lit. And then, so and then this should at least say doctor, or you can say just Cheryl Carvajal, but something to denote more than just my last name. But then, yeah, that's what it, and of course, student should be capitalized, even though it's, the student name. But then up in the heading, before you start creating some sort of header, because you're supposed to put the last name in the header with the page number, you always, always, and can you see the bar that I'm showing, when I change rulers?
Yeah.
Okay, so just go to insert, and you're inserting, oh, come on, y'all, page number. And so you want it at the top of the page. Don't use the like page one and stuff like that. Don't use the fancy headers. That's not MLA format. But see, once you have this, then you need your last name. And the other thing you need to do before you move that is you need to make all of this Times New Roman 12-point font. And see, because you put the page number in, when you scroll down, page 2, actually it should have, why is it not showing the name? I don't know. It's not showing the name. Oh, because I didn't remove it out of there. So let's take this out for a second and see if it was removed over here. Yeah, so this is, I'm going to have to look at that. Page insert. Go to page numbers. Format page numbers. 1, 2, 3. 1. And it's not showing in here. I don't know what's going on with this header. It may have been something that he stressed about too, because this is a slightly different Microsoft Word. If you are in Google Docs, which I know some of my students are high school students and they use Google Docs all the time, there are different ways to get around that. But what you need to do is first make sure that you have pagination, and then sometimes it'll just show some sort of like on the subsequent page, it'll just show some type of weird, like almost like a hashtag and stuff like that. And that's okay. When you print it, see what it looks like when you print it. And that's probably going to show you the name. But then once you have all this, we're still in a mess. Why are we in a pickle now? What's wrong with this format? Like all this.
Well, there's a space between the title and
Yeah, there's a lot of space. And this is also not, double spaced, and everything's supposed to be double spaced.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So let's start at, and I always just Control A, and that highlights everything, but you can just scroll down and highlight the entire document, and that includes works cited page. Okay. And then go to essentially your paragraph formatting. And it may be that you don't have like this ruler stuff at the top, depends on what kind of word you have. But if you go up to, I think it's not here, it's something, but it's like format or something. And then in format, it says paragraphs, and you want to go to that. So let's go back to home. And so in paragraph though, I'm just going to look at paragraph settings. And that's what I always do. And so, and I just changed it, so it's really easy to change back, but it should not say auto. It should say 0. And the line spacing should all the way through the document be double spaced. And really, you know, you can say a special, you don't have to, but every paragraph needs to be indented half. So a lot of times I'll do first line half an inch and just put that in there so it's there. I'm going to have to change the works cited page once I get there, but at least that's okay. Now what's wrong? Obviously this indent is wrong. So these have to be moved over to the left margin. The other thing that's wrong is there's extra space, and that needs to be gone. Even if the title is, if I take out this actual title, let me take the actual title out. So if I take that title out, even that is tabbed over. I can tell it's not. So make sure it's over on the left margin, and then Control E actually centers things, but just, or you could just push the center button up here. So you could highlight this particular part and make sure it's made to be center. Then I inserted the tabs, so I'm going to have to take out a few because somebody tabbed, and that's okay. But see how long this paragraph is? So it started here, it goes a whole page. That's a long paragraph. So if you have really long ones like that, you want to kind of be careful and try not to do that. Okay, then, so we have citations. I put actually some of these in here, and so make sure you do actually cite your work when you do it. The easiest way to do it, and there's an extra space right there. The easiest way to do it is to just cite by the last name of the author. You don't have to put in an entire anything. You're instead looking for just, you're just looking for that first word. And if there is no author, then it would be whatever the first word, major word in the title is, in quotation marks like that. Same, so this would be don't or society. And this is actually incorrect. This should not, if it's not a person, it's not the author. The other thing is, what else is wrong with this? I'm gonna delete this part because I actually say all that. So what's wrong? We have the works cited page, and it's at the bottom. Let's go ahead and make it on a new page. So we're just going to insert a page break. So now we have the works cited page. And what's wrong with this page?
Are they spaced too far apart?
Well, yes, remember, it's all supposed to be double spaced. So no extra spacing. What else is wrong with it? Look at the format. What's weird about it? Okay.
I have a hard time with this part.
Okay, so this, first of all, needs to be left aligned. Second,
Oh.
instead of being a paragraph format, we're going to go back into that paragraph preferences, and just this part is highlighted, and we're going, instead of first line, we're going to do hanging, because it's supposed to look like that. So the first line in a citation should be the one sticking up against the left margin. Any subsequent stuff should be tabbed in. So if I put an actual, I'm going to move this for a second. Not say that. Okay, so we're going to go. Oh, where can I go? Let's just do a search. So if I'm looking up a poem, so if I'm looking at this poem, and this is where I am, this address, I'm going to copy it. And if I go back into here, if this is the address, I can add this, but it will stay on there. If it's super long and it goes longer, then it would go back to the next thing, and it's actually going to continue on this line, blah, 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 blah. So if it's a huge long, say that it's like 55 different, I don't know, it ends up being like 4 lines of a web address, that's okay, but it needs to continue to be tabbed over all the way over here. The other thing, what else is wrong? What I just did, what did I do that was wrong? Besides this is not actually anything.
It shouldn't have it's the link part.
Right. The hyperlink. It
Yeah.
wants you to have the actual address. But all you do is right click it, remove the hyperlink.
Cool.
And so you should make sure, I mean, I want the address. If you have an online poem, which almost all, remember, these are all linked. So if you have those online poems, put the whole web address in there, but then take off the link. The other thing is, these are all wrong. This is just really, this person had tissues. But all of this is just delete it. And instead of no page, no date, any of this stuff, you don't ever put any of that. It's all out. So core beliefs, this is the date that either if there's no date on the page, you put the date that you got it. When did you pick it up off the internet? And it could be the date that you were writing the paper. That's fine if you went back to it. And then it's just comma. And if you can, like this one has change core beliefs, identity, that's actually the main page that it comes from. So we have the article, then we have the kind of like web magazine or something. But there might even be, like obviously in this case, if I were to cite the actual poem, let's just switch that. We'll just change all of this right here. And we're going to start from the beginning. So Kipling wrote it, Rudyard. Then it's called If, right? Then it's Poetry Foundation. And then the date, what's today? October 17th, 2023. And then that HTTPS, whatever it is. With no, I mean, that's really it. The other thing that's happening is like, this is society. This is don't, these aren't alphabetized. And they need to be. The other thing is they also need to be in Times New Roman, 12-point font. So everything should be Times New Roman, 12-point font all the way through. Is that clear? So
Yeah.
everything's double space. Oops, this is not time. Actually, let's just Control A. And we will make sure it's all Times New Roman, 12-point font. Questions?
You know how you said that when you are citing the thing, a source in the text, if it doesn't have a title, you use the first word of the, if it doesn't have an author, you use the first word of the title.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do if you have two articles that have the same first
Then you
word?
use the second or third word. You put essentially, okay, so let's go back to the first, to this bottom. Blah, 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 blah. And sometimes you'll have two things by the same author. And so you would have to put, so if it were another thing by Kipling, we're writing about Kipling, then I would put, I'm just going to not have it italicized, but I would put in parentheses, I'd put Kipling if, like that. And that way we know which Kipling it is, we know which work you're talking about. Because people have compared two works by the same author. Like Poe, sometimes people would have compared two short stories by Poe because they have some dark something that they like or whatever. If there is no author though, it would just be like, for instance, for Society Shapes Identity, it would just be Society. And if it's Society and Magic or something is another article, then you would actually put Society Shapes for one, and then the other one would be Society and what was the title I even gave it?
Magic.
And Magic. Because and is not a, it's not a real something. But never put what to expect if you don't pay your taxes. That's too long. You would literally, if there's no other title that starts with what, you would just put what. Because all we need is that first word. That's why I say it has to be alphabetized. So you just, and it's real easy to alphabetize. You just copy them and paste them. Ta-da. And this one, I don't even know what that is because it's digital history of what? I don't know. That's probably an incomplete something. But so you have the alphabetizing all the way through. And if you only have 2 or 3 sources, 3 or 4 sources, it's not going to take you long to alphabetize. Okay, so let's talk about one more thing before we go though, because I need you to understand this too. So we're going to, even though this is just other text, okay, let's pretend, we'll just put this on a new, we're just playing around with this poor person's stuff. Okay. Let's pretend that we have to cite something. Okay. So we're talking about Martin Luther King here. So let's just go ahead and we'll cite, remember how I said that one thing was, essentially you're citing, you use the IC method. So you're introducing the approach taken to solve the matter became violence, just as Langston Hughes threatened in Harlem, or his poem Harlem. I can't type. And then you're going to, essentially every quote you make for poetry, every quote is going to be in block formation. So normally block formation is like, it would happen if you are quoting a big source. So let me see. I don't want to use that one because I want to, let's go ahead. Okay, so in the poetry assignment, let's just open that for a second. It takes a minute. Why does it always take a minute? If you're quoting something and it's 3 lines or longer, and you're like, say for instance, I decided I wanted to quote this from another site, and I'll just use it this way. Okay, so I would copy that. And then I'm going to block the quotation. Anything, and this is for prose, anything over 3, that's 3 lines or longer, when it's a quote, needs to be blocked instead of quoted. So what that means is you essentially take the whole thing and move it over a full inch. Okay. In poetry, everything's blocked, even if it's just 2 lines or 1 line. So you think about Harlem, and let me find Harlem for a second. Search
When you set it apart like that, do you still need to use quotation marks?
No. Fantastic question. Okay, so
Thank you.
I'm gonna, you're welcome. Okay, so this is a quote from Harlem. And I'll probably go, let me go back and get the question, which is the whole point of the quote. Okay, so what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Da, 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 da. Okay, so this is obviously I could, if I run, and some people do this, where they go slash and space to separate lines. Okay, and then they can put it in prose and they can still block it, but it is so hard to read poetry that way. So I say no, don't do it. Just do it that way. And actually, this is all kind of tabbed over because these are all indented from the original format. You want the format of whatever you quote to be the same format as what you originally saw. So if they tab in some lines and some lines are less tabbed in, try to make it resemble as much as possible the original. But so then I introduced it, just as Langston Hughes threatened in his poem, blah, 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 blah. And then I have to explain it. So we have the introduce, then we have cite. Here's the citation, this blocked quote of poetry. And then I have to explain. And then I say, when Hughes says blah, 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 or discusses a fester like a sore, he is showing that when men and women can't reach their dreams, those dreams turn sour. Painful reminder. Okay, so there's my interpretation. So that festering like a sore means that it's always hurting and it's always bothering them. They're always reminded of what they can't have. And so I said that. Does it stink like rotten meat? Think about the smell of rotten meat. And I can go through that and describe that too. But anything you cite, you need to explain. And so, and then go further, say, okay, so that's what's going on. And that's how it goes back to this idea of dreams, and especially dreams that are unrealized, and how bitter we become when we can't have what we not just want, but need and deserve as a human being, or something like that. And so I can explain it further. But the citation has to be blocked like this. Now let's take let's take a shorter thing, and we're just gonna
Um,
go ahead.
so when you block it like that, and then you put in parentheses the
Mhm.
citation, so you put it within the block, like how it's at the last line of
Well,
the
it's at
block.
the end, and they don't normally, if you were to cite a quote, you would you would actually like end the quote. Here's up here in Harlem where we are. Say I'm right up here. Then you would
Yeah.
put Hughes, period.
Yeah, but for the purpose of the
Right.
poem
And I could put
poetry
a
block.
colon here. That's what I probably would do, but to introduce a blocked quote. But the truth is in a regular quote, yeah, you would put it like it was good, it was fun, it was a good change, da 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 da. And then I would end the quote, and then but I'd take away the period. So it's different in that you have quotation marks in a quote that's inside. You have quotation marks that end, then you cite, and then put the period after that. In a blocked quote, you end the quote. You don't have quotation marks. And then after the poem is over, then you put the citation. And there's
Thank
no
you.
extra period. So let me go, let's go up here. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And then I'm going to share that one. Yeah. Oh, actually, I need to, okay, so let's go back to if. Oops. Okay. So let's go ahead and share. Yes. So now you see Rudyard Kipling's. So anything I do, see, you notice how his are staggered. So if should be the one farthest, just an inch from the side, and then R losing there should be a few, like you can make it a half an inch further, or you can make it a little less than that, but just try to make it as much as possible look like this. And you can talk about just 2 lines at a time. So I could copy this, and then I'll go back to the original, and I have to stop sharing and move because that's how WebEx works. But I can go in here, and instead of this one, I'll just put, okay, so now it's all messed up everything, but that's okay. See? So I have this, and all you really have to do is go up to this where paragraph is and go in and then in. And then you've taken it in a full inch. And there you go.
Cool.
And then after, even though I didn't finish the thought, it's a comma, I would still put Kipling. And then I'll explain what that means. Now, if you're not putting a full sentence up there, you want to fit it into the sentence in some way, or see these lines from if and show the lines and then explain all of it, but no matter how many lines, even if it's one line, cite it like this, because it's going to be so much clearer where the poetry is in your source. Even when you're talking about your own poem, so if you decide you want to write your own poem and you're explaining it, give us the lines a couple at a time and then explain those lines so that we can see them quoted like this in a block formation and then see you explain them. So that's just going to be standard for this particular essay. Hopefully people will watch this video. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so one more thing I'm going to show you.
Okie dokie.
I'm going to go over here, but I'm going to switch. I have to move things around. And go to this website. This is the newly refurbished Purdue OWL website. So if you're having any issues at all, like formatting is I just don't know what I'm doing, whatever it is, go up and he has an online writing lab that's free to use. And if you, someday down the line, if you need APA, like your formatting is supposed to be an APA format, well, then it has an APA guide too. But we're using MLA. So you just literally click on the MLA guide and you can talk about general format for guidelines on writing an MLA style paper. And it can go step by step. It also tells you how to make in-text citations and how to create a reference list. And you can actually go through, we don't use endnotes and footnotes, but it talks about how to format quotations. It talks about in-text citations. It talks about the works cited page and how to cite, especially electronic sources. That's going to be your big thing. And so it's going to give you examples that will really help. It even gives you like a sample works cited page. Ta-da!
Yeah,
So,
I've used that Purdue the MLA as it's a handy reference.
okay, now when you do the citation, be really careful. Like, I know that there's a citation builder, I think, on our library website, but it will say, list all these different things. So it'll say, what's the date of the publication? What's the author? What's the, and if you don't have an author, you'll say no, no author, or you'll say NA, and then it will pop it into your citation. And that's not where it belongs. If there's no author, you just skip to the next thing. So you just start with the title. If there's not an author, and it needs to be a person. If it's not a person author, don't say, editors at this place. That's not an author. Unless it's listed as a person, it just skips to the title. And if there's no date, there could be a date for both the article, like maybe at the bottom, I'm going to see, just a second, let me see at the bottom. Like this, for instance, copyright 2023. So we don't have a month, close this, but we do have a date. So the copyright for this is 2023. So we would put in 2023, literally, after the Purdue OWL website. But like, there's no author of this, so we would start, the article title would be MLA sample works cited page. We put that in quotes. Then we put Purdue OWL. Then we'd put the year that it was copyrighted. Then we put the date that we accessed it, which is October 17th, 2023. And then we put the website, which is way up here. So it's MLA is actually pretty standard. And if you come close, I'm not going to take off points. But unfortunately, I had a bunch of students who all they gave me was the blue web links, and that's not okay. Hyperlinks are not okay. You're not supposed to even have hyperlinks. They need to be removed, but that's not a citation. And you certainly don't want to go into your paper and, cite your poem and then put a web link as the citation in the parentheses. No, 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 no. So as long as you're, if you run into issues, if any of you guys do, anybody watching these, this is the place to go for help. I wouldn't suggest it if I didn't think it was super helpful. So, and it can help you in so many different ways. So just use their resources, and they are free with extra free, which is the best kind of resource. Okay. So any
Okay.
questions, Jordan?
Well, I do have
Okay.
a question. It is back when I took English 1101,
Mm-hmm.
I took it with Miss Jackson,
Mm-hmm.
and she showed us how to use this website called MyBib to help us build our works cited page. And I was just wondering, are there any does it try to do anything funny
Yes.
to the that
Yes.
we need to be careful about?
Well, the main thing is I mean, you can put things in, type things into a thing, but if you don't use the right format, it's still going to be wrong. And so it is important, and that's why I spend so much time on it when I teach Comp 1. And that's one reason I expect it here, and I try to walk you through this here, because I mean, even if you eventually go into a field that's requiring APA, and it's a different style manual, you need to know how to do these things properly. And if you don't, if you depend on the computers to do it, like honestly, Microsoft Word has a citation builder, and it's wrong. And MLA changes their rules every year. Right about in the middle, well, it's just after Christmas, they meet. The MLA actually has a world, well, they have a US convention, but they change the rules every single year. And so even if you have Word or you have some source, or even the, MyBib or whatever, if it's 2 or 3 years old, it's not going to give you the right citation. And I know a lot of teachers will do something like that. Oh, well, let's use the 2016 version, or let's use the da 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 version. You want to use the most up-to-date version you can. But honestly, for me, I am not a super stickler. As long as you are making a really good faith attempt to do this right, you're going to be fine.
Oh, thank you.
I just want, but a hyperlink is not a good faith effort. And that's what and there were quite a few people who used sources and described them, even cited them in the essay, and had no works cited page. Or they had a works cited page and they never cited anything that was listed on the page. The truth is, for works to be cited, they have to actually be referred to and cited in the essay, and then listed fully on the works cited page. So both sides have to happen. And so that there was I just want to make sure, hopefully people will watch this, because this should help you at least not get dinged for any of these issues. So double space, Times New Roman, 12-point font with the heading and all the correct stuff. So But if you're worried about it, we have several weeks before these things are due. So if you want to, I mean, anybody, and that's included not just you, Jordan, but anybody who watches the video, you can send me a rough draft, or even just send me your works cited page and say, is this right?
Oh, thank you so much.
No, that's what I always do. So, but I'd rather that you get it right and you learn to do it right than that you come in and you get points ding. I don't want to ding points. I would love to just give hundreds, 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 but I can't do that if all of the. So the main thing is make sure you've got it format wise right, and then go through that list of expectations on the paper assignment sheet, and make sure you've done everything that it says you need to have done, and look over your previous paper, whatever your score happens to be. Even if it was a really good score, go in, and I've written all over it and I've given you advice, and that's usually, most of that advice is going to be advice you can use for this paper too. So um, it just may it, and if you can't see it, if the for some reason the document won't open or you can't see my comments, tell me and I'll send them to you. So I want you to get what information you need to learn to do this all right. Because the truth is, you're going to, especially if you guys go on to other levels of learning, if you transfer to a 4-year school or something like that, they're not going to give you anything. They're just going to say APA style, this many pages on this subject, and they're just going to expect you to know how to do it right. So I'm trying to give you some, but I don't give you nearly as much as I do for 1102, 1101. I just, at some point, if you've had 1101, you should already have some basics, but hopefully this is a good refresher. Any questions now, Jordan?
Um,
Boy, that woman
I
looks like
think
a school teacher.
I think I'm good
Okay,
right
you
now.
sure? Well, if you have questions, you can always email me. And again, you can also send me a citation and say, is this on the right track or something too?
Thank
Okay,
you so much.
no problem. Thanks for coming. And I
Thanks
did
for
keep you
having me.
almost a full hour. Sorry about that. But
Oh, it's fine.
hopefully it was all helpful information.
It was. Thank you so
Well,
much.
I will see you next week
See you.
and happy reading.
Oh,
Bye.
thanks. Bye.